English. And during, okay, everybody, I'm sorry that I had technical difficulties. I cannot do it in Facebook Live. So everything that we have is here, all of you, in YouTube. All right.
Hola amigos.
Oh, sorry.
A hablar
Okay, everybody. For those, I see most of the people are people that you know and people that follow me. But anyway, Jorge has been doing this process of the method of the consciousness for a couple of months by now, or maybe a little longer in Spanish, very successfully. It's something that it makes me very happy that Jorge can bring this to all of us to help us in these difficult times we are living. The first question that I have, Jorge, for how long have you been practicing this method?
I have like two answers. In a way, I have been working with divine consciousness for many years, at least I would say all my life, but more consciously probably since 2004. And specifically the way I'm doing it now, that I call it the divine consciousness method, it started in July this year, when I was trying to find a way to share with people a way to teach them to work with energy, to access their skills. And so this is what came down for me. I realized that before I was working with energy, I started to work with energy in healing in 2004, but I realized that I'm talking for myself. Even though I was talking about working with energy, in reality, I was always working with consciousness. And consciousness and energy are two different things. Recently, in July this year, is when I realized the difference between one and another. Very often we talk about energy and we say that energy is intelligent. But in reality, what is intelligent is consciousness. Mm-hmm. Energy is like a densification of consciousness, but the intelligence in energy comes from consciousness. So if people are talking, all these healers now, they are saying that they work with energy healer, blah, blah, blah. In a sense, they are making more dense their work, because what we manifest, in a sense, what we express. So if I'm saying I'm working with energy is not really intelligent. Of course, the healer is, if he's truly in his heart, is connected with energy, with consciousness, But in a sense, it's not the same that when we are consciously working with divine consciousness.
Yeah, I do understand that, and also I agree with that. Now, why, when I asked you about 2-3 months ago, hey, Jorge, would you like to do it in public? Why did you feel that it's okay now to do it publicly?
It was longer. This started, you called me, actually you wanted me to do that in June last year, and I told you no. And the truth is, my inner guidance was telling me that I was supposed to continue working like I was, anonymously, privately. And then when you insisted at the beginning of June this year, something shifted inside, and my guidance told me that I needed to be sharing some of the discoveries that I have been doing. And so it wasn't time last year, but for some reason it was time in June this year. We started in the middle of June. Mm-hmm. With the Wednesday workshops, I thought, well, we are doing one. I thought, no, we don't do anymore. Then you called me before the second one, and I was convinced that I was going to tell you no. I checked with my guidance, and it said yes, and I said, oh my God. So that was the beginning of this situation.
So this is almost 5 months since then. I want to tell you that also changed the way I do my work, because I understand that, and I was doing something like that, but I didn't have it clear. I have another great friend of mine, healer, and she works like that, and she was trying to convince me in a very subtle way until I got it. So I understand that it's very more powerful because we live this work to this higher consciousness, the divine consciousness. And why don't you explain your method? I mean, the method is not yours, but the method that you use.
Okay, the method was an evolution in a way of things. The first thing that is very important and we need to talk about is about what's called the tiny space of the heart, which is essential for this work. Drumbalo Melchizedek is a great spiritual teacher. He's the one that brought the knowledge of the tiny space of the heart in his workshops. He teaches about the Merkaba activation and so on, and he taught about it. The tiny space of the heart is a place inside our physical hearts. There are two spaces very important. The one that is called the sacred space of the heart, and the second is called the tiny space of the heart. The sacred space of the heart is a physical, it's a fine place. It's like an astral place where we have a lot of information about ourselves, our stories, and we separate it from source. And the tiny space of the heart is a place inside the sacred space. The space of the heart is infinite. When we get into that space, it's infinite. Why? Because there is only one tiny space of the heart in the whole creation. And this is the heart of God. Everything came from the heart of God. Everything was created in that sacred place. And so when we get into the tiny space of our hearts, we merge with the heart of God. So, and in that place is a place where we can experience unity, oneness, and all these things. God can be found anywhere, but He's especially or much more easy to find when we are in this sacred place called the tiny space of the heart. And so, in order for this process, divine consciousness method to work, we need to access that place. And Drumbalo gave a lot. I was a trainer in Drumbalo Melchizedek's school for probably like 6 years. I was one of the last groups that he taught, and it's to his workshops. Awakening the Illuminated Heart, they are still available. And to access that place, it takes a couple of days and so on. But I found that either because some things have really shifted in the world in the last several years, it's very easy to access this place. In reality, the way to access that place is not something that you teach. It's an experience that you assist people to have. It's actually like an initiation almost. So you don't teach how to enter the tiny space of the heart. You facilitate the experience for people. But people have to do the movement into that place. So far good? Is it clear what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay. So it's very important to get the experience of being in the tiny space of the heart. In order to do that, we need to know that all the work that we do with energy or with consciousness is based in two principles: attention and intention. These two things are absolutely essential. If you need to put your attention on what you want to do, and what you intend is what the energy or consciousness are going to be doing. So if I work with energy, it's going to be energy that is floating, and if it's consciousness, divine, and it's not any consciousness, you know? Is actually divine consciousness. There are many different densities of consciousness. A dog has consciousness, a tree has consciousness. But when we are talking about consciousness in the work that we do, we are talking about divine consciousness, God consciousness. So it's essential to work with attention and intention. So we need to know where to put our attention and what we intend consciousness to do. So in order to move into the tiny space of the heart, the first thing to do is to move our consciousness. Our consciousness, I guess that everybody knows what consciousness is, but consciousness is that part of us that never dies, that is eternal, infinite. It's like a spark of the divinity, individualized. It's like an individualized, it's like a wave, is like an individualized part of the ocean, you know? And so consciousness is the same. The wave is not the ocean. The wave is like part of the ocean. The ocean, the substance that makes the ocean is the ocean water. The wave is made of ocean water. So both the wave and the ocean are made of the same substance. And that substance is divine consciousness. That is individualized in one, like I said, the individual consciousness, you know, is individualized, and also you have consciousness, divine consciousness that is like God itself. So, in order to do, probably what we need to do is to talk a little bit more about the tiny space of the heart, knowing that in that place, past, present, future, everything coexists. So you can access any timeline, actually, when you are in the tiny space of the heart. Another thing that is important to know is that in that place, we experience oneness. When we move into that place, normally what we experience first is an expansion, and we perceive the change in frequency. It's like we perceive it. And so it's like we know when we are in that place. Now, regarding this divine consciousness method, we need to know that God creates or holds and destroys things, meaning that he can dissolve, transform, or clears it. And to say that God holds is like saying that he preserves. You know, it's like in the Hindu scriptures when they talk about Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. Brahma will be the creative aspect, Shiva will be the destroyer, the one that destroys, clears, dissolves, transforms. And then there is Shiva, Vishnu. Vishnu will be the one that is preserving, you know, that holding things, keeping creation in place. And so all the processes that we do from that place are happening are loving processes. So the first thing that we need to use to know for this method is what we want to achieve. Meaning if we want to create, dissolve, or preserve something. So once we know, we can work on something. So why don't we explain it by doing it, if you want? Are you there?
Yes.
So my suggestion would be that we close our eyes and I be guiding you through the process. So
no, what I'm going to do is to put the whole video on your screen, so I'm going to be smaller. You just keep talking and I'm going to do that change.
Okay. So the first thing we are going to do is to close our eyes and sit in a position where we are comfortable, to find a comfortable position. People that meditate tend to sit with a straight spine, but we could be laying down or recline, whatever. The important thing is that we are alert and that the position we are in doesn't tend to produce unconscious states or move us into sleep. So it's important to be aware for these processes. I ask that any of you that is participating in this event don't be manipulating driving or manipulating equipment as we do it. Okay, so what we do is we lift our gaze to this point between the eyebrows. There is a connection that is important to hold all the time, which is the place of the tongue. The tongue needs to be either resting on the roof of the palate, which is the place, the normal place, or massaging lovingly, softly, continuously, a place, it's like the tip of the tongue, you put it on the palate. The palate is divided in two parts, a hard part in the front and a soft part in the back. So you put the tip of the tongue on the on the hard part of your palate, very close to the division line where it's this hard and soft. When we stimulate that point with the tip of our tongue, first it connects our heart with our brain. This is one of the variations of Kichari Mudra, a Hindu a yogic technique to connect the heart with the brain. That produces great benefits. There are different positions. We are going to suggest right now to put this one in the place I'm telling you. And when you massage that place in your palate, tends to produce alpha waves, which is the first step of meditation when you are in alpha wave. Okay, so you can place your tongue there and start massaging. And now what we are going to do, you can do that all the time. If the tongue gets dry, you moisture it and you put it back, or you keep your tongue resting on your palate. That's the place where we should always have our tongue. It also strengthens our aura. Okay, so begin to put the tongue on the palate, to rub it softly, lovingly. And now we are going to start moving our consciousness. Imagine that the consciousness is somewhere in your brain. Somewhere in your brain, next to your pineal gland. The pineal gland is in the center of the brain. You don't need to know exactly this. Just imagine that your consciousness is like a mini me, a mini you, placed there next in the center of your brain, or imagine your consciousness like a little sphere of light. And now you're going to start moving your consciousness down from the center of the brain, going down through your throat, and keeps going down until it goes behind your heart. Do this movement. I'm going to be waiting a couple of seconds while you move your consciousness. Now we are standing behind, our consciousness is behind the heart. Imagine that we are going to be doing a movement. Our intention is to move forward and to move until we reach the tiny space of the heart. We are going to move a very short period. The moment we stop, the intention is that we are going to be in the tiny space of the heart. And the attention is going to be in the movement we are going to be performing. So we start now, we move through the walls of the heart to this place called the tiny space of the heart. So we move, our consciousness moves until it reaches that point. Now we stop and we are there. We pay attention to the feelings and sensations. Pay attention to the vibration. Maybe you see lights. You may ask that there be light. We feel how our vibration begins to expand. We may be hearing it. It's a high pitch that we believe we hear with our ears, but in reality we are hearing this sound with our intuition, this vibration. It takes us to a state of greater alertness. We are all together moving into this place. Now, in this place, we are going to call or invoke, any way you want to call it, your higher self, or individualize divine consciousness. It's a spark of divinity called you that is incarnated in this body. Now we are in the tiny space of the heart, in the heart of God. So imagine that you are in God's presence. How you feel when you reach that place. Now we invoke and we intention to connect with God, to connect with divine consciousness. We become one with divine consciousness, one with our own individualized divine consciousness and with divine consciousness. So we become one. Now let your mind behind and just feel how it is to be there. You are in God's heart. You are in His presence. You are His child. And now we say, divine consciousness, flow through me. And we begin to feel divine consciousness flowing in us. Just feel that your thoughts go away. You are being bathed in divine consciousness. Every cell, every atom, every organ is being bathed in divine consciousness. meditate to remain in this state, quiet, relaxed, with divine consciousness flowing through us, flowing in us, bathing us. It's a tremendously healing experience, uplifting. And the more we practice this, we more and more move into a state of beingness. Our breath relaxes, calms down, the thoughts calm down. Now we move closer and closer to God. Now we are going to do something. We could just be in divine consciousness, melting, becoming one with it. Or we can use it to heal, to preserve something, or to clear something. So before, we're going to be doing an energy balance. And this is a very practical way to clear issues, to energize, to heal. Because whenever divine consciousness flows into something, brings order, harmony, beauty. Divine consciousness is intelligent. It has God's intelligence and all of God's power. Divine consciousness is love, is omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience, eternal, ever existing, is joy. So in order for you to learn how to use divine consciousness, this method, we're going to use it to do a chakra balance and clearing. So we start, say, divine consciousness flow in my root chakra. The root chakra is on the coccyx bone. So we put the attention on the place we want the divine consciousness to flow. And our intention is that divine consciousness begins to flow on our root chakra, clearing it, unblocking it, removing any obstacle that could be there, anything that is out of place. So we make it flow on the root chakra. Now we say, divine consciousness flow in my sexual chakra, which is on the sacred end, sacred bone. We ask divine consciousness to clear any issues related to our sexuality, our sexual organs. Now we say divine consciousness begin to flow in my solar plexus energy center. And you say it mentally. So the intention is for divine consciousness to flow in that energy center. Now we say divine consciousness begin to flow in my heart chakra. Now we say divine consciousness begin to flow in the upper heart chakra, which is the place between the heart and the throat chakra or cervical chakra. It's a mon petit bone at the upper part of the sternum bone. And we say divine consciousness begin to flow in the throat chakra or cervical chakra. There are different names of the same. And we see how it clears any issue that we may have there, bringing balance and harmony. There is a place, another chakra in the back of our skull, where there is this little hole in the upper part of the neck. Right there inside of our brain, of our skull, there is a place called the medulla oblongata, or occipital chakra. We place the attention there, and we ask that divine consciousness flows in there. Now we put our attention in the spiritual eye. We say, divine consciousness flow in my spiritual eye. That's the intention. And attention is in the spiritual eye. Now we say, divine consciousness flow in my crown chakra, on top of the head. Now we make divine consciousness flow in the aura of our body, in all our physical body. In every muscle, every tissue, every organ, any gland, the endocrine system, the circulatory system, digestive system, lymphatic system, nervous system. We just make it flow. We make it flow in the abstract channels in the spine called Ida, Pingala, and Shishim. And we see this divine consciousness flowing up from the coccyx, going up, all the way up the Sushumna channel in the spine. We make it go up to the crown chakra. Or we could make it go up through the Sushumna channel, and when it reaches the medulla oblongata, to bend like a cane and go directly to the spiritual life. Feel this prana, this consciousness, divine consciousness moving through this channel and interest. And feel how you're feeling. Feel the peace. Look at your breath, how the breath has been calming down. It might be that you feel like not breathing. That's perfectly fine. If you feel like not breathing, don't breathe. Not by controlling it, but if it happens, just allow it to happen. It's wonderful when the breath stops naturally. And divine consciousness can make your breath stop. So we did two things. First, we move into the tiny space of the heart, which is very simple. And now that you have been there, you know. And you have been baptized by divine consciousness. It's not a mental process. You are experiencing the connection with the divine. This is your heritage. It belongs to you. And once we did that, we just merged with divine consciousness in a contemplative way, just being there, doing nothing, experimenting or experiencing our beingness. And then, from our beingness, we use divine consciousness, we made it flow. And when we made it flow, we become divine gods, creative gods of divine consciousness. And we have the same power that God has to create. Everything was created by God from this tiny place. When we are there, in oneness with Him, we have the same power to create. We become omnipotent. So now I'm going to teach you how to clear any issue that you may be having in your life. I'm going to give you a few minutes or something like that to find something that you want to work on. We're going to start clearing something. So if you want to clear, find something that is not working in your life. It could be a problem with your relationship, a problem with money, could be health, could be maybe you have sadness or depression, or maybe you have problems at work, or you are fighting with your child or your wife, or you have sexual problems, or you have an addiction, or you have, I don't know. You don't rest, you cannot rest, or you are facing some kind of physical challenge or a disease. Choose something, one item. Choose one item. Okay. Now you are going to say, divine consciousness begin to flow on the one item you want to clear, fix, resolve. Just mentally say, divine consciousness begin to flow, and now divine consciousness is flowing. Your job is to bring to mind all the ways that you know that this problem is affecting you. Let's begin. We're going to be quietly doing that, and your job is to bring to mind all the ways the problem is present in your life. Is present or has been present. Just think about it. In the meantime, divine consciousness sees what you are presenting and working on it. Let's begin. Very good. Now take a deep breath and find something else you would like to clear from your life. So take a moment to find something else that you would like to work. It could be to continue working on the same subject, but not on exactly from the same viewpoint, trying to see it from a different side. Imagine that you are carving the David like Michelangelo. He didn't work all the time on the same place from the same point. He had to go all around. So it could be the same issue from a completely different viewpoint or a new issue. Okay, let's begin. Just say in your mind, divine consciousness, begin to flow on, and now bring to mind all the negative ways that this issue you are working on, that you want to clear, is affecting you in your life. All the ways it's bothering you. Normally, to hold divine consciousness flowing between 3 to 5 minutes is enough. Sometimes with 1 or 2 minutes it's also enough. But you need to, it's important for you to get used to hold the flow of divine consciousness for a while, because, how can I say, it helps to bring forward things that are outside of your consciousness normally. So even though sometimes in a short time it's done, very often it's good to hold the divine consciousness flowing, because it allows things that are unseen for us to come forward. And then once we see what came forward, we do a new process and we dissolve it. Very good. You can bring your attention back. But meaning that you could be aware of your surroundings, but the goal is that we keep our consciousness always in the tiny space of the heart. Our goal will be to live from the tiny space of the heart, always there, always there. Now, we could also use this process to create something. In that case, you think about your creation, what you want to create, and all the positive ways you ask divine consciousness to begin to flow, and you bring forward your creation. You think it in positive, wonderful, colorful ways, and divine consciousness will assist you in manifesting what you want. You can use it on absolutely anything, for yourself, for others, for the planet. Some recommendations is, first, if you are in the tiny space of your heart, meaning your consciousness is in the tiny space of the heart, you don't have karma, because you are one with God when you are acting from that place. And so you can do anything that you do from there doesn't accumulate karma. If you are in your mind, meaning that your consciousness is not in the tiny space, you accumulate karma for your actions, because you are not in the tiny space, and from the mind, we are not in the state of oneness. At the same time, we can make divine consciousness flow on anything or anyone. It's like a great gift that we are doing. Sometimes I have birds that come to I live in an apartment with a balcony. It's a 5th floor, and I have a little fountain, water fountain, and dogs come. And I see these dogs coming to drink water from the fountain. And often I just ask divine consciousness to flow in them, and they love it. And when they feel it's enough, they go away. So I'm not doing anything for them that is harmful. Now, let's say my son or my great son is in love with somebody that is, I don't know, he's 20 years old, he's in love with somebody that is 50, or is a crook, or is in drugs, or whatever, that it doesn't follow in your standard. It wouldn't be okay to start making your son or your great son to end that relationship. That will not be okay, because you are interfering. But it will be okay to make divine consciousness to flow in that person, on his relationships, on all his relationships. So this is like the greatest blessing you could be doing. You make divine consciousness to flow in that. And divine consciousness will know what is best for that being. And if the being chooses that he wants to continue having that experience, that's his problem, it's not yours. So you are not interfering. I hope that this is clear what I'm saying, In one case, if I'm making divine consciousness flow for the relationship between, let's say, my grandson and his partner, to end, and I don't have the permission or the request from this person to do that, I am interfering, and that is not correct. But if I am if that person said, I cannot break up with this relationship, and he asked me to help him, in that case, we'll be okay. I hope it's clear. Do you think it's clear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you are getting this for free. This is something that belongs to humanity. It doesn't have a trademark. I'm not charging. Nobody has the right to call it its own, in a sense. If you are a professional, you can use it to heal people. That would be the greatest thing. Drupal Melchizedek, he did a lot of experiments on healing, and he found that the greater healers when they are healing, the greatest healers, when they are healing, their consciousness is in the tiny space of the heart. And that is the most important thing, to be there and to be in love and to act from love. And when you're in the tiny space, your intention makes divine consciousness flow. And that is the greatest way to do things. It's like a way of being, in a sense. You are healing through your beingness. And this is not a technique. It was difficult for me, I call it a method. But it's not even, it's like a way of being more than anything else. So there are techniques around and all these things in reality help the healers to be comfortable with what they are doing and to give them self-confidence. But the greater self-confidence that you get, the most powerful is when you are in the tiny space in the heart and you are working with divine consciousness. You don't teach this method. You are not allowed to teach it because teaching is from the mind. You are allowed to share it with anyone, but if you are going to be sharing, you probably need to watch this video many times. There is a PDF with the instruction that I gave Carlos, and I don't know how he will attach to this video.
Yes, it's below the video.
Okay, so you can read these instructions there many times and get the language correct. And so if there is somebody you want to share it, you can actually pass the video and the person will get the activation, or you provide the person with the experience. This is not teaching, it's giving the person the experience. So you need to be comfortable knowing how to move into the tiny space of your heart. You need to have mastery in being and entering the tiny space of the heart. You need to know how to guide somebody to move into the tiny space of the heart. Once the person is there, you ask divine consciousness to start flowing, and you tell the person to feel this. And so anyone that has this experience can convey this experience to another person. Anyways, we have been talking for almost 1 hour. I think that this will be enough for today about teaching this method. How are you feeling, Carlos?
I feel tons of energy in my brain. It was very energizing for me as always.
You're mumbling. You're talking more clearly. Your face changed.
Yeah.
Your eyes changed too. You were not in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Can use it to clear anything. You can use it to clear entities. You can use it to clear anything. And if you find that it's not working, after working, the healing or the transformation or the effect of what you're doing could be sometimes instantaneous, other times maybe not. If it's not, it could be because there is some type of interference that you need to find, or could be that you are not placing divine consciousness on the right thing. Let's say, if I have a pipe that is leaking and I place my attention on the stain on the wall, instead of the leaking pipe, I may not be able to heal it, or may do it. Maybe it will do it, but if it doesn't, I need to find exactly where I need to place to make divine consciousness to flow. Okay, I don't know if there are any comments or questions or something.
I don't see any because, well, no, all the people, they understand, well, most of them understand English, the people that I know. No, most of these people have listened to your workshop in Spanish, so.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, what do you think we finish here?
I think so, and you tell me when would you like to do it again in English to build to share with more people, because in my channel in YouTube I've been doing so many videos in Spanish that they need to know that this is available in English too.
Okay. Well, we will talk, we will let it like a seed, we let it sprout and see what happens.
Okay, perfect.
And then we talk again.
All right. Thank you very much, Jorge. And for all of you who watched this video for the first time, as Jorge said, do it again and stay tuned for another workshop of the method of the consciousness, divine consciousness in English. All right, Jorge, thank you very much. I'm going to end the streaming. Okay. Bueno,